Only the Megastructures has the capacity to reduce such vast quantities of heavy metal to splinters in time for this ship. But it means working at its limits. It may be a risk too far. The shredder is a mite of modern engineering. Spanning 150 meters end to end, it destroys lorry loads of heavy metal in moments. But it doesn't operate alone. Underneath the hefty shell of this industrial beast is a human crew.
On the shredder, we have 3 people on the in-feed. There's 2 driving the in-feed machines, which throw in the scrap onto the in-feed belt. Another man stays on the floor inspecting the material which is delivered. We have then got a Cat 972 driver who drives around emptying the bays out and moving the steel round. We have then, in the picking shed, we have 10 pickers who are actually picking off the dirt out of the frag and the copper which has been left by the systems. So in total we have about 17 people on the shredder.
The force this industrial titan needs to apply to pound through heavy steel and grind objects into fragments sees it cannibalize 1 ton of its own flesh every day. Site engineering manager David Lee choreographs the delicate balance between essential running time and self-destruction.
It runs every other day, and in the days it runs, it does about 2,000 to 2,500 tons of scrap. And then we do the next day, we stockpile, because we find that's the most efficient way to run the shredder. On the days the shredder's off, there's a lot of cleaning. We've then got to repair any rips in belts. And the basic trouble you have with a shredder, whenever it's running, it's basically eating itself. So the steel inside is wearing away. So when it's stopped, you then got to replace the steel you've worn away in the day when it's running.
By the time the ship arrives, the mighty shredder will consume 3 tons of its own metallic organs. A dedicated team of engineers cope with this self-mutilation. To produce the highly prized metal nuggets so sought after across the world, the shredder needs raw materials. Thousands of tons of it. There is plenty of scrap to choose from. On a daily basis, Americans use enough steel to run a pipeline from New York to Los Angeles and back again. That's almost 8,000 kilometers. Trucks arrive with more scrap, destined for the Evdoxia. But there is a bottleneck. This waste isn't cleared for entry until they pass the site's radiation barrier. It has never happened at Newport, but accidental hazardous waste can get through even the most stringent of checks.
The 2 towers you can see behind me are radiation detectors, and their job is to ensure that any material coming onto site, be it by the lorries or the rail freight, is completely and utterly free of any radioactive material.
Traces of radiation are found in the most innocent of objects, like hospital waste. This category of refuse isn't sent to a general recycling centre, but there is always a risk of accidental contamination. The consequences would be devastating. Evacuation, followed by weeks of decontamination. The checks are clear and the truck drivers weigh in. The companies delivering the scrap are paid by the ton for their cargoes. This simple weigh-in and weigh-out system calculates the amount on board, triggering the payments. But radiation isn't the only potential danger lurking in rubbish. Scrap cars have some surprises of their own. Cars have a useful life of about 13.5 years. Many will live longer. But those that don't are scrapped. European law demands that 85% of every scrap car needs to be recycled, from the metals to the tyres, and even the engine oil, coolant and fuel. The end-of-life vehicle team at Newport has this dissection process mastered to surgical precision. First, the car is made safe. The battery is removed and a special remote control unit connected, which detonates the airbags and seatbelt pre-tensioners, rendering them harmless.
Back to 3, 2, 1.
Things aren't always this straightforward. Removing the battery from a car that's been damaged in an accident calls for a little innovation. Approximately 75% of the average car is metal, and 2% is liquid. A selection of specialized tools sets to work in removing these fluids. A car is the most recycled consumer product in the world. In just 1 year, the number of recycled cars would cause a traffic jam circling the Earth more than 1 3/4 times. Recycling isn't the sole reason for dismantling scrap vehicles. Some of the components and liquids in vehicles would be hazardous if they entered the environment. Just 1 litre of oil could contaminate 100 litres of water. This punch is made from brass, so it doesn't spark and cause an explosion when it hits the fuel tank. "4,000 cars a year are stripped at this recycling centre, but that's less than a day's rations for its shredder." The high-tech gut of this metal-chomping monster can digest 450 cars every hour. To satisfy its voracious appetite, tens of thousands more cleansed vehicles are shipped in from all over Britain from a network of scrapyards and end-of-life vehicle centres. Quality control is everything. Even the tiniest amount of combustible liquid will burst into flames and shut down operations. If fire were to spread, the site would be evacuated and the stockpile of scrap rendered entirely worthless. The contaminant is removed and the site is cleared in seconds. It's a well-rehearsed safety drill. Someone's once prized possession is reduced to little more than a husk. But 80% of its component parts will go on to live again, in another form, maybe even a new car. Recycling isn't complete until new products are created from the reclaimed materials. The stripped cars are thrown to the ravenous beast. In just 2 minutes, the shredder turns this vehicle to a pile of shrapnel. The conveyor belt feeds its victims into the gaping mouth of the shredder. Immediately, 2 giant feed rollers flatten the shining goodies, ready for annihilation. Moments later, these massive rolling hammers, each one weighing almost half a ton, smash the elongated metal against a grid, turning familiar objects to anonymous fragments smaller than a man's fist in seconds. an overband magnet separates the ferrous from the non-ferrous metal. Ferrous metal is magnetic, like steel and iron. The rest includes aluminium or copper. Inside the belly of the machine, giant wind turbines draw away any non-metallic objects like foam or cloth left over from car seats. Eddy current separators use alternating magnetic fields to sort the non-ferrous metals. The nuggets travel to the picking shed. Here, any cloth or plastic still in the mix is removed, leaving only the scrap metal. These prized nuggets are melted to become new consumer goods, like car parts, washing machines, or fridges. Making products from recycled steel takes over 70% less energy than producing them from raw materials. The processes hidden underneath the shredder's thick metal skin turn everyday trash into some of the highest quality ferrous product, called frag, in the world. And it gets added to stockpiles on the dockside.
We're producing about 2 million tonnes of steel and ferrous metals out of the UK alone.
Ferrous metals are found in a range of objects, from washing machines to tin food cans. And we get through a huge number of those. Each household throws away at least one tin can every single day. Worldwide, about 630 steel cans get recycled every second. That's enough in an average year to stretch a line of cans to the moon and back 3 times. These are big numbers, and recycling on every level is making a huge difference to the environment.
It takes the same amount of energy to make 1 can from aluminium ore as it takes to make 20 cans from recycled aluminium.
Poison-infused waste unpalatable to the shredder. Humans can't compete with the quantity produced by the mega machine. But they step up operations in an attempt to help with the crisis. Over 5 million tonnes of hazardous waste is produced every year in England and Wales, including 2.5 million fridges. Old household fridges contain CFCs, or chlorofluorocarbons, as a coolant. These chemicals threaten the Earth's ozone layer. Here, world-leading technology works to remove these hazards and fragmentize the leftovers.
Fridge plant is 750,000 fridges a year currently being processed through it, but it can handle up to 1 million fridges a year. It's been designed to capture the ozone-depleting substances which are present in older fridges.
The CFCs are in the fridge's foam insulation, and the liquid in its cooling system. The liquid is drained, and the fridge is gutted of anything that would harm the machinery, like mercury switches and glass. Then their journey to destruction begins. 8 at a time, the fridges rise up the conveyor belt towards the blender. A nightmare version of the familiar kitchen appliance, this blender uses 2 heavy steel chains rotating at high speed to smash the fridges to pieces. In just 4 minutes, 8 fully sized fridges are reduced to a mix of dust and metal chippings. Any CFC-contaminated foam still in this mixture breaks down to around 2 millimeters. Perfect for falling through the holes in the giant metal sieve. The CFCs from this plant are destroyed by incineration at extreme temperatures. Stripped of their poisons, the small particles of shattered fridges continue to a field of electromagnets that sorts the iron and steel from the rest. The amount of steel recycled from each fridge weighs around 40 kilos. More and more household goods are being replaced rather than repaired each year. And metal isn't the only reusable commodity. Recycled plastics and glass also account for major environmental savings. Over 100 million tons of plastic is used every year. That's 20 times more than 50 years ago. Its manufacture takes 8% of the world's oil production, yet only 7% of this widely used commodity is recycled. It's common to switch TVs or computers for new ones before they reach their sell-by date. These icons of modern living can't be thrown in the rubbish. Their chemical and mechanical contents are lethal to the environment. So, a specialized process is in place to deal with them. This shed dismantles 60,000 TVs and monitors every month. But it's a drop in the waste electrical ocean. Around 2 million TVs and 2 million computers are thrown away in England alone each year. Each TV and monitor is individually dissected. A machine sorts the leaded and unleaded glass. The plastics are separated and the internal workings of each machine extracted. Over 1 million tons of electrical items are trashed in the UK every year. That's the equivalent weight of 2,500 jumbo jets. 10 years ago, this waste was destined for landfill. Now, everything is recycled.